In this video, I will be taking a look at the season that, in my opinion, is underrated. It had 9.6 million average viewers compared to the 2024 season that had only 2.9 million viewers average. The Bud Shootout. Dale Jarrett would get the pole for the race, and Greg Biffle would actually lead the most laps, with Jimmie Johnson ending up winning the race. Dale Jarrett got the Daytona 500 pole after his Bud Shootout pole, and Jimmie Johnson and Michael Waltrip won Duel 1 and Duel 2 respectively. The Daytona 500 started with Dale Jarrett leading the field down to the green and lost the lead on lap 1 to Jimmie Johnson as he led the first lap. On lap 15, Bobby Labonte blew an engine and caused the first caution of the day. Scott Wimmer led the field back down to the green after taking 2 tires. Also, on lap 28, Ricky Rudd spun out in front of the field, and 5 other cars were involved in the crash. The big one happened on lap 184. Greg Biffle ran into Scott Riggs, collecting 11 cars in turn 3, and Scott Wimmer's car on the apron flipped and did a barrel roll. He was okay after the crash. After, Tony Stewart led 107 laps on the day and finished 7th. The winner of the race would go to Jeff Gordon after leading 29 laps. At the Auto Club 500, Kyle Busch became the youngest driver to ever take the green flag on pole position at 19 years old. At the end of the race, Greg Biffle would win over Jimmie Johnson and Kurt Busch, with the margin separating the top 3 being 0.525 seconds. Jimmie Johnson won race 3 at Las Vegas over the 2 hometown drivers of Kyle and Kurt Busch. In race 4 at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Jimmie Johnson led 158 laps and lost to the rookie of Carl Edwards, who won the race barely over Jimmie Johnson with the margin of victory of 28 thousandths of a second. Kevin Harvick would win the next week at Bristol. Also, top 10s for Travis Kvapil, Kyle Petty, and Scott Riggs. At Martinsville, Jeff Gordon would win the race after he was 3 laps down at one point to get his 6th win at Martinsville and his 71st career win. Domination by Greg Biffle after he led 219 of the 334 laps, and he won the race. After that, Kurt Busch won the next week over Michael Waltrip. Jeff Gordon won his 3rd race of the season after dominating 139 of the 194 laps at Talladega Superspeedway, and also back-to-back top 5s for Michael Waltrip. Greg Biffle won the next race at Darlington. At Richmond, Casey Kane finally got his first career win. Great video on Casey Kane's pack to victory by Ellie Productions 49, shout out. The All-Star Open was won by Brian Vickers, and he finished 3rd in the All-Star race. Mark Martin won the All-Star race over Elliott Sadler. The longest race of the year was the Coca-Cola 600. 22 cautions, a NASCAR Cup Series record for most cautions in a race. At the end, it looked like Bobby Labonte could win the race, but Jimmie Johnson lost in a close finish to Carl Edwards at Atlanta earlier in the year. But this time, Jimmie Johnson did the same thing as Edwards did earlier in the season, and he passed Bobby Labonte to win Jimmie's 3rd straight Coca-Cola 600. Qualifying was rained out the next week, so Jimmie Johnson led the field down to the green, and Greg Biffle won the race. At Pocono, Carl Edwards won over a weird top 5 of Brian Vickers, Joe Nemechek, Kyle Busch, and Michael Waltrip. The Batman Begins 400, yes, that is a real name for the race. At Michigan, Greg Biffle won another race. At the Dodge Save Mart 350 at Infineon Raceway, now known as Sonoma Raceway, Tony Stewart won over Ricky Rudd. Shout out to Ron Fellows for getting an 8th place finish for the 32 team, substituting for Bobby Hamilton Jr. And also, Brian Simo, I believe that's how you pronounce it, picked up his own first and only career top 10 finish driving for the number 33 RCR Chevrolet. In back-to-back weeks, Tony Stewart won the Pepsi 400 over Jamie McMurray. Check out the video I made on him. and the race also ended at 1:48 a.m. At Chicagoland, RIP, Scott Wimmer did not pit on the final restart with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and a few other cars. Dale Earnhardt Jr. took the lead, and Matt Kenseth, who led 66% of the race, lost because of he pit. At the New England 300, Tony Stewart dominated the race, leading 232 of the 300 laps, and won. Part of his victory celebration was Tony Stewart again climbed the catch fence up to the flag stand like he did in the Pepsi 400 2 races ago. Kurt Busch won the Pennsylvania 500. And then, at the most famous racetrack in the world, Indianapolis, for the Brickyard 400, as a late race crash by Jimmy Johnson, the winner was again Tony Stewart, with him and his teammates climbed the catch fence at Tony's home track. Then, Tony Stewart got 2 in a row at Watkins Glen. Also, shout out to Robbie Gordon, Boris Said, Scott Pruitt, for all getting top 5s. At Michigan, Jeremy Mayfield gambled on fuel mileage to win the race. The next week in the Sharpie 500, 415 of the 500 laps was led by Matt Kenseth as he won. In California, Kyle Busch became the youngest NASCAR driver to ever win a Cup Series race. As last time they were at California, Kyle Busch became the youngest driver to get the pole. Kurt Busch won the final race and the last race of the regular season. Wait, the regular season? Playoffs? What playoffs? Postseason? What is this? The top 10 drivers in points would make the chase. And the first place driver in points would get reset to 5,050 points. And it goes down by 5 until the 10th place driver in the points who will get 5,005. In first place is the number 20 of Tony Stewart, then Greg Biffle, Rusty Wallace, Jimmy Johnson, Kurt Busch, Mark Martin, Jeremy Mayfield, Carl Edwards, Matt Kenseth, and rounding out the chase is the number 12 of Ryan Newman. The first race of the chase at New Hampshire, Ryan Newman won over Tony Stewart. And then Jimmy Johnson won the next race at Dover, of course. The third race of the chase at Talladega Superspeedway was definitely the wild card of the chase. Started out with Jimmy Johnson spinning at Elliott Sadler, which caused a huge wreck that also ended the day for Mark Martin, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Michael Waltrip, who was sent flipping twice across the track. He was okay after the crash. Also, parts of Talladega Nights were filmed during this race, which would come out the next year. Kyle Petty crashed on the final lap, and Dale Jarrett won the race over Tony Stewart, who finished second again. At Kansas, Mark Martin got his first victory of the season as Roush Racing cars finished 1, 2, 3. Also, Denny Hamlin made his first Cup start that day and finished 32nd. At the Lowe's Motor Speedway, the driver in the Lowe's car of Jimmy Johnson won over Casey Mears and Joe Nemechek, who got a top 10. Jeff Gordon got another win at Martinsville, and also more Tony Stewart second place finishes. At Atlanta, Carl Edwards swept both Atlantas of the season and got a win, but this time in a less exciting way than the last time. And then at Texas, Carl Edwards went back-to-back. Kyle Busch won the second to last race at Phoenix, and Denny Hamlin also won the pole. Shout out to Robbie Gordon and Travis Quapple for getting top 10s. In the final race of the season at Homestead Miami Speedway, Tony Stewart won the championship as the second place driver in points. Greg Biffle won the race as he led his team to a 1, 2, 3, 4 finish. Casey Mears and Dave Blaney got a top 10 also. This was also Rusty Wallace's final race as he ended his career with 55 wins, 36 poles, 202 top 5s, and 349 top 10s. And he was the 1989 Cup Series champion as he finished his last career season with an 8th place in points. I think overall, was this the best season? No. Was it a very good season? Yes. Those are my thoughts. Tell me your thoughts in the comments.